Hi, it's Rachel from Tea and Forget-Me-Nots.
Hi, welcome back to Tea and Forget-Me-Nots. I'm Rachel and I upcycle furniture and decor, and you can find all of my pieces over at teaandforgetmenots.com. So today I have a bit of a fun one. It's part of a challenge from Corey from Desert DIY, and that is to either donate or gift a piece of furniture or sell it and donate the profits. So that is what I'm doing today, and I am donating a desk to someone who is starting secondary school, or the school you start around 11 next year. So that will be really lovely. So the challenge is actually called the Ugly Duckling Challenge. So clue is in the name, you start with something ugly and turn it into a beautiful swan. Now I'll let you into a little bit of a secret. My piece didn't really start very ugly, it was just classic orange pine. But I thought the more people who do this challenge, the more people who will find out about it, and the more pieces that will get donated or money will get donated. And that's pretty special that we can do for Christmas. Okay, so onto my desk, let's get into it.
I got this piece from a local charity shop for £20, and the same day I got it I knew exactly where it was going, and that was, as I said, to someone who is starting secondary school next year. So they're about to get a lot more time for things like reading and homework, so this will be a great addition to their room, somewhere quiet that they can work. I always love finding out a little bit of history of the pieces, and this one actually had a sticker on the back which was dated 2004, and the customer was called Martin, so possibly that was when this piece was either created or resold. Sometimes you get lucky with stickers, sometimes you don't. I got the majority of this one off and then managed to heat up the glue to remove the rest of it with a hairdryer. So to start with, I wanted to remove some of that orange pine and give the top of the desk a lighter look to make it look a bit more modern. As this is a piece that is potentially going to last them throughout their school, it'll be nice for their piece to have a bit of character but also something that they can grow into. So to get the top off of the desk, I used some paint and varnish stripper and a paper towel with some gloves and rubbed it in all over the top and left it for about an hour for it to seep in and loosen that varnish. Satisfyingly, the varnish came away quite easily by using a scraper to remove it, and it comes off just in big lumps. So it's a good idea to have something like newspaper to hand to wipe it off into that, and something you can just throw away. I did do 2 coats of the stripper and it didn't leave it perfectly removed, so I ended up using my sander on 80 grit and then up to 180 grit to take off the final finish. So with all these things it was a bit of a process, but left the desktop looking really lovely and fresh. Fortunately, I didn't need to go to the same lengths for the body and the drawers because the person wanted these painted. So after all of the sanding, I then cleaned the piece and used a TSP cleaner called White Lightning and spritzed it over the entire piece and used a cloth to make sure it really got the entire area nice and clean, and then used some clean water to wipe off any of the leftover residue. So I had my blank canvas nice and clean to start from. So on to the fun bit, the painting. But first of all, I had a transfer to work with, and this one was called Midnight Floral by Redesign with Prima. And the chosen colour was green, so I initially got out the transfer to see what type of green would look nice against the flowers in the image. So the winning paint was a cactus, which is a silk paint from the Dixie Belle range. And it's quite muted and not too bright, so quite a subtle choice to show off the transfer nicely. After having chosen the paint, we got to painting, and I started by painting the drawers with a brush, and the coverage of silk paint, I've said before, I think is excellent, and it only took 2 coats to cover all of the drawers and the base of the desk perfectly. And I used a combination of a couple of different brushes of different sizes, particularly for the spindles and the legs on the base of the desk, and a roller for the larger surface areas. And I often have the paint in a roller tray covered with tin foil as well, just for easy, quick cleanup. For the second coat of paint, I actually turned the entire desk upside down so I could get to those difficult to reach areas such as the legs, to make sure that I painted them completely. As well as it helping to have the desk upside down to get to those difficult to reach spots, I also had it on this moving roller wheels so that I could just whiz it around and get to a different side quite quickly. I find when you have to pick a piece up and rotate it, you're often touching bits that are already a little bit wet, and it just makes it really quick to get to the next spots before areas dry. So while I really liked the natural wood top that we had, it looked a little bit pale and a little bit flat, so I gave it a paint wash to give it a slight bit more colour to it. I used the colour Sandcastle, which is a light yellow. And to create a paint wash, you simply mix an amount of your paint with water. And the more water you add to the paint, the more translucent and see-through the paint wash will look. Now, I did this by eye to what I was happy with, and simply added some paint to a pot, topped it up with water and mixed it together. And it created this quite runny mixture. And I applied it with a brush, and when I'd got one coat all over the desktop, and then wiped it back with the towel so it stayed quite translucent and some of the wood grain beneath would still be visible. So you always have to check what the rules are on the different brands of transfers. So for redesign with Prima, they recommend between 48 hours to 1 week after your last coat of paint before applying the transfer. So I waited 36 hours before cracking on with the transfer on the drawers. So I laid out the drawers flat on the floor so I could work out which parts of the design I was going to use. In the end, I chose a couple of the larger sections of the groups of flowers on the top and bottom drawer and placed them so they would only slightly overlap on the second drawer. And I applied it with one of these felt edge squeegees, which you can also use for applying decoupage papers, and it's quite a nice gentle tool to use. With all quality transfers, it should be quite easy and simple to see when the transfer has fully attached because the colour changes slightly. And sometimes you have to lay it back down to reattach it some more, but in this case I didn't have to reattach it at any point and it was very straightforward. So where the transfer went over the edge of the drawer, I made sure to cut a straight line because that second part of the transfer would be going onto this second drawer. So I wanted to make sure that that was cut nice and smoothly. So once the transfer was on, I just went back over it with the squeegee tool to make sure that it was firmly attached. And when you can still see parts of the halo or the line around the image, some of that comes out with the extra burnishing of another tool, or it disappears often when using a top coat on top of it. And I didn't lose any of the design. Even just with the one drawer, I'm really happy with the choice of paint. I think it is a really lovely combination, quite a grown-up colour scheme, but something that should last for quite a few years to come. So the important thing about applying transfers on several doors or several drawers is to make sure they're in place before applying the second part of the transfer. I put the first drawer that I'd finished back into place within the desk before doing the second drawer, and that's because drawers are often not lined up perfectly within the unit themselves. The runners will be in slightly different places. So even if you perfectly line up drawers that are on the floor, once you put them back into place, they could be slightly wonky. So I made sure to apply the second part for the middle drawer while they were both upright. And once that transfer was in place, I then put the drawer back on the floor so I could apply a good amount of pressure to get the transfer on nicely. So the person who I'm making this for did ask for the transfer to go on the top of the desk. However, transfers are more decorative than durable, so I did just the one flower on the top for them. And whilst Cactus does have a built-in top coat on it, of course the transfer still needed sealing. So I did 2 coats of a satin clear coat as the top coat over both the painted areas and the desktop, which gave the whole piece a really lovely sheen and finishes it really nicely. So the original handles on the desk were quite solid circular wooden ones, which I didn't really think matched the slightly more elegant look that this piece now had. So I chose these black pumpkin shaped handles as they were prettier and also matched the black details in the bottom of the legs. However, when it came to applying them, the screws they came with weren't long enough because the straw fronts were actually particularly thick. So I needed to use the screws from the original handles to make sure they fit perfectly. Now, of course, I don't know the verdict of the person who this desk is going to yet, and I would love to be a fly on the wall as they watch this video to see what is coming to them very soon. But I'm really proud of this makeover. I think it's such a difference to the plain pine that it started as. I really love the bright flashes of colour with the flowers and the more modern looking desktop as well. And I hope they will be as delighted to have it as I had fun making it.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider subscribing. It makes a huge difference to smaller channels like mine. And of course, check out the other videos for this Desert DIY Ugly Duckling Challenge in the playlist. Alright, until next time, thanks very much. Bye!
If you'd like to know any more information about the products I've used, I will list them in the description, and there is also the playlist to the other makeovers in this Ugly Duckling Challenge. Thank you very much. Until next time, bye!